The stars above shimmered like frozen fire as the Terran Expeditionary Corps, TC, landed on Sci-Fi 9, the homeworld of the Zenari. Captain Elias Voss stepped onto the soft blue grass, his boots making no sound. He was leading humanity's first diplomatic mission to this world, eager to establish relations with the mysterious alien species. The Zenari were tall, elegant beings with luminous silver eyes and smooth, dark blue skin. They resembled humans in many ways, but there was something ethereal about them, something that made them seem almost unreal. As Elias approached their leader, Ambassador Nylan, he extended a hand, a gesture of goodwill. Nylan's expression shifted instantly. His glowing eyes dimmed, his lips pressed together in what could only be described as sadness. Instead of shaking Elias's hand, he took a step back, folding his hands behind him. The other Zenari standing nearby also moved slightly away, as if an invisible force had pushed them back. Elias hesitated. Did I do something wrong?" Nylan let out a deep sigh. "No, Captain Voss, it is not your fault. But we Zenari, we never touch humans." His voice was heavy, as if carrying the weight of an unspoken tragedy. Dr. Evelyn Carter, the team's xenobiologist, observed the interaction with curiosity. "That's unusual. Many species hesitate with touch, but this seems like a strict rule," she murmured. Elias frowned. "Why, Ambassador?" Nylan's gaze lingered on Elias's outstretched hand before he turned away. "Because once, long ago, it nearly destroyed us." His voice was barely a whisper, but every human in the delegation heard it. A silence fell over the landing site. The TEC crew exchanged puzzled looks. What could have happened between humans and Zenari? Elias, sensing the tension, decided to change the subject. "We respect your customs, Ambassador, but we hope this meeting is the start of a new friendship." Nylan smiled faintly, but his sadness remained. "Friendship? Perhaps. But there are things you do not yet understand, Captain Voss." The humans were escorted to the Zenari capital, a breathtaking city of glowing towers, floating gardens, and silent, flowing rivers of light. Yet, despite the beauty, there was something unsettling. Zenari citizens observed the humans with curiosity, but none came close, not even the children. Dr. Carter whispered to Elias, "It's like we're ghosts, or something worse." As the sun set, Elias stood on a balcony overlooking the alien city, his mind racing. He had felt excitement upon arriving, but now a strange unease filled him. What was the great wound Nylan had spoken of? What had humanity done in the past to make an entire species fear their touch? One thing was certain. The Zenari were hiding something, and Elias intended to find out why. The night sky over the Zenari capital glowed with floating lights, drifting like silent fireflies. Captain Elias Voss stood on the balcony of his assigned quarters, staring down at the alien city. The streets were peaceful, yet something felt wrong. The Zenari were kind, welcoming, and intelligent. They had offered the TC delegation fine food, soft beds, and access to their vast knowledge. But one thing remained clear: they never touched humans. Not by accident, not by mistake, not even when handing over objects. Elias turned as Dr. Evelyn Carter entered, holding a data tablet. "I've been digging through the Zenari public archives," she said, her tone serious. "Something isn't right, Elias. There's almost no historical record of human-Zenari contact. But I found hints." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Hints?" She nodded. "Scattered mentions of an event called the Great Wound. It's never explained directly, but every time it appears in old texts, it's followed by laws about avoiding physical contact with humans. Almost like we're cursed." Elias crossed his arms. "Cursed? We've never even been here before." "Exactly," Evelyn said. "Officially, this is humanity's first contact with the Zenari. But what if that's not true?" A cold shiver ran down Elias's spine. If humans had been here before, Why was it erased from history? Just then, the door chimed. It was Ambassador Nylan. He looked conflicted, his silver eyes troubled. "I need to speak with you," Nylan said quietly. "But not here. Follow me." Elias and Evelyn exchanged glances before nodding. The ambassador led them through the silent city, down winding paths lit by glowing blue plants. They arrived at a small garden, where the air smelled of something sweet and ancient. Nylan sighed and faced them. "I should not be telling you this," he admitted, "but I see the questions in your eyes. You deserve to know some of the truth." Elias leaned forward. "What truth?" The Zenari ambassador hesitated before speaking. "Centuries ago, humans came to our world. It was a different time, a different era. We welcomed them as we welcomed you. But their presence changed us. It was not war. It was not invasion. It was something worse." Evelyn's breath caught. "What happened?" Nylan looked away, as if remembering something painful. "The first time a Zenari touched a human, our kind nearly ceased to exist." Elias felt his pulse quicken. "How? What do you mean?" Before Nylan could answer, a sharp alarm rang out through the city. The ground beneath them trembled slightly. Zenari guards ran past, their faces filled with urgency. Nylan's expression turned grim. "Someone knows I am telling you this. We must leave now." As they followed him through the glowing streets, one thing became clear. The mystery of humanity's past on this planet was bigger than they had imagined, and someone was willing to hide it at all costs. The warning sirens echoed through the Zenari capital, their eerie hum vibrating through the air. Captain Elias Voss and Dr. Evelyn Carter followed Ambassador Nylan as he led them down a hidden path behind the glowing gardens. Elias's heart pounded. "Who's after us?" Nylan didn't stop running. "The High Council. They do not want you to know the truth." They entered a dimly lit underground passage, its walls covered in strange symbols. The air was colder here, carrying the scent of something ancient. The moment the entrance sealed behind them, Nylan turned to face Elias and Evelyn. "I have little time," Nylan said, his glowing silver eyes filled with sorrow. "But you must understand, humans have been here before, and what they left behind nearly wiped us out." Evelyn's breath caught. "That's impossible. Our records say this is first contact." Nylan shook his head. "Your records lie." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Then tell us the truth." The Zenari ambassador hesitated, as if debating whether to continue. Then, with a heavy sigh, he gestured toward an old holographic console embedded in the wall. He placed his hand on it, and the ancient machine flickered to life. A blurry projection appeared, a recording of humans standing beside Zenari, taken centuries ago. Elias stepped closer. The humans in the footage were wearing old Earth uniforms, their insignia faded but still recognizable. The name on their ship, barely visible, read, Astra Dawn. Evelyn gasped. The Astra Dawn was one of Earth's earliest deep space colony ships. It vanished over 400 years ago. Nylan nodded. It did not vanish. It came here. Elias clenched his jaw. What happened? The ambassador's voice was filled with pain. The Astra Dawn's crew brought something with them. Something that infected our people in a way we did not understand. It was not a weapon, not a disease, but a mutation. Evelyn's eyes widened. Mutation. Nylan nodded grimly. The first time a Zenari touched a human, our genetic code began to unravel. Our children were born weaker, sicklier. Many did not survive. It took us decades to stop the damage, and by then, it was almost too late. Elias ran a hand through his hair. But why didn't anyone know? Why did humanity forget this? Nylan looked away. The Astra Dawn's crew realized what they had done. They tried to erase their presence from our history, and yours. They left, taking their secrets with them. Evelyn whispered, "And you've been avoiding human touch ever since." The ambassador nodded. "It became law. No Zenari must ever touch a human again. A heavy silence filled the room. Humanity had unknowingly left behind a wound that never healed. Before Elias could respond, the tunnel shook violently. A deep voice echoed through hidden speakers. "Ambassador Nylan, you have broken the sacred law." Elias's blood turned cold. They had been found. The underground tunnel trembled as the deep, artificial voice echoed through the walls. "Ambassador Nylan, you have broken the sacred law." Captain Elias Voss and Dr. Evelyn Carter exchanged tense glances. Nylan's silver eyes darkened with worry. He turned towards a hidden panel in the wall and pressed a sequence of symbols. A secondary tunnel opened before them. "Move," Nylan urged, his voice sharp. Without hesitation, Elias and Evelyn followed him into the passage. Behind them, the air filled with a mechanical hiss, the sound of automated guards sealing off the area. The High Council was hunting them. As they ran through the dimly lit corridor, Evelyn spoke between breaths. "Nylan, we need to know everything. If humans caused this, we need to fix it." The Zenari ambassador didn't answer immediately. His face was tense, but after a long moment he nodded. "Then you must see what was hidden." The passage led to a vast underground archive chamber, ancient and untouched. The walls were lined with glowing symbols, but at the center stood a large stasis pod. The thick glass was cracked with age, and inside was something that made Elias's heart stop. A human skeleton. Elias stepped closer. The remains were still wearing a tattered Earth military uniform. The emblem on the chest read, "Vanguard Initiative. Astra Dawn Mission." Evelyn swallowed hard. He was part of the lost expedition. Nylan's voice was somber. Not just any part. He was one of the ones who changed us. Elias clenched his fists. What did they do? Nylan activated a nearby console, and an old holographic recording flickered to life. The grainy footage showed humans and Zenari working together in the past, smiling, exchanging knowledge. But then the images changed. Zenari who had touched humans began to look sickly. Some collapsed. Others aged rapidly. The horror on the human scientists' faces was clear. They hadn't meant to harm the Zenari, but it was already too late. Evelyn covered her mouth. Their DNA was breaking apart. Nylan nodded. It spread fast. Only those who had never touched a human were unaffected. That is why we made it law. Never again would we risk extinction. Elias exhaled sharply, and humanity forgot, or erased it. Before Nylan could answer, a warning light flashed inside the chamber. A detachment of Zenari enforcers had entered the underground tunnels. Their glowing weapons hummed with energy. A voice echoed through the speakers. "Captain Elias Voss, Dr. Evelyn Carter, and Ambassador Nylan, you are under arrest for violating the sacred law." Elias turned to Nylan. "Can we fight them?" Nylan shook his head. "No, but if you truly want to fix this, you must surrender." Elias and Evelyn exchanged a final glance. They had come searching for answers. Now it seemed those answers would cost them everything. Slowly, they raised their hands. The cold steel restraints tightened around Captain Elias Voss's wrists as he and Dr. Evelyn Carter were led through the towering halls of the Zenari High Council. The guards moved with precision, their glowing weapons humming softly, a silent reminder that any attempt to escape would be useless. Beside them, Ambassador Nylan walked without resistance, his face calm but his silver eyes filled with resignation. Elias whispered, "Are they going to execute us?" Nylan didn't answer. He simply glanced at the grand doors ahead as they slid open, revealing a circular chamber. Inside, the High Council sat on elevated platforms, their expressions unreadable. In the center of the room, a holographic projection flickered, a recording of Nylan revealing the truth to the humans. A tall Zenari with deep violet skin and piercing gold eyes stood. She wore ceremonial robes lined with shifting patterns of light. Elias recognized her from previous diplomatic meetings, High Chancellor Mixa, you have broken the most sacred law of our people, Mixa said, her voice calm but sharp. She turned to Nylan. And you, Ambassador, have betrayed your own kind. Nylan did not flinch. I told them the truth, a truth that should have never been buried. Mixa's gaze flickered to Elias and Evelyn. Humans do not belong here. Your kind once brought devastation to our world. And now, history repeats itself. Evelyn stepped forward despite her restraints. We didn't know. We were never told what happened. Humanity has no record of the Astra Dawn's fate. Another council member, an elderly Zenari with pale blue markings, spoke. Perhaps that was intentional. Your ancestors hid their crimes. Elias shook his head. Then let us make it right. His voice was steady, determined. If humans caused harm, we'll fix it. But we can't do that if you keep running from the past. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some council members seemed intrigued, while others looked unconvinced. Mixa studied Elias carefully. You speak of repair, but how? The damage was genetic, woven into our very essence. Evelyn took a deep breath. We have advanced technology now. Genetic reconstruction, bioengineering. If we study what happened, maybe we can find a way to reverse the damage. Silence filled the hall. The council members exchanged glances. Nylan finally spoke. We have spent centuries fearing them. But look at them now. They stand before us, offering to heal what was broken. Should we let our fear keep us from hope? The room was tense. Then Mixa raised her hand, silencing the whispers. You will not be executed, she declared. But your fate is not yet decided. If you truly wish to repair what was lost, you will prove it. Elias nodded. Whatever it takes. Mixa's golden eyes narrowed. Very well. You will be given one chance. But if you fail, there will be no second. Elias exhaled. The fate of an entire species now rested on humanity's shoulders. The tension in the council chamber was heavy as Captain Elias Voss and Dr. Evelyn Carter absorbed High Chancellor Mixa's words. They had one chance to fix the damage humanity had done to the Zenari. Failure meant death. Elias exhaled slowly. We'll need access to your oldest medical records and genetic data, he said. Mixa's golden eyes narrowed. You will be taken to our research facilities. But be warned, if you attempt deception, your lives will be forfeit. Evelyn nodded. We only want to help. The guards released their restraints, but remained close as they were escorted through the glowing corridors of the Zenari Biocenter. The facility was breathtaking. Holographic data floated midair, shimmering like liquid light, while intricate machines hummed softly, scanning strands of DNA suspended in energy fields. A Zenari scientist named Varen met them at the research station. His gaze held both curiosity and suspicion. You truly believe you can undo what was done? He asked. Evelyn stepped forward. I won't know until I analyze the genetic mutations. If we can isolate the changes caused by human DNA exposure, we might be able to create a counter-sequence. Varen studied her before nodding. Then follow me. They entered a vast chamber filled with preserved biological samples, strands of ancient Zenari DNA, medical records, and even genetic scans from the time of the Astra Dawn's arrival. Evelyn's eyes widened as she scrolled through the data. This is incredible, she whispered. Your people kept everything. Varen gave a grim smile. So we would never forget. Elias crossed his arms. Then let's make sure your people never have to fear humans again. For the next several hours, Evelyn worked tirelessly, her fingers moving rapidly over the holographic interface. She compared pre-contact Zenari DNA to modern samples, searching for the precise mutation that had nearly wiped them out. Then, she found it. Her breath caught. This isn't just mutation, she murmured. It's an unintended genetic overwrite. Elias frowned. Explain. Evelyn zoomed in on the data. Human DNA carries unique protein markers. When the Zenari first made contact, Those proteins somehow triggered an automatic assimilation response in their genes. Their bodies tried to adapt, but instead they became unstable. Varen's eyes widened. Like an infection. No, more like a forced evolutionary shift that backfired, Evelyn said. If we reverse engineer these proteins, we might be able to stabilize your genetics permanently. Elias clenched his fist. Can you do it? Evelyn hesitated. I can try, but I'll need access to your most advanced genetic engineering tools. And I'll need a test subject. A tense silence fell over the room. Then, to everyone's shock, Ambassador Nyland stepped forward. I will be your test subject, he said firmly. Elias stared. Nyland, if this fails. The Zenari ambassador met his gaze. Then I will be the last to suffer for our past. The room was silent. The experiment would begin, and the fate of an entire species hung in the balance. A heavy silence filled the Zenari Biocenter as Ambassador Nyland stepped forward. His silver eyes were calm, but there was no mistaking the tension in his posture. Captain Elias Voss and Dr. Evelyn Carter exchanged uncertain glances. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. If Evelyn's theory was correct, they could stabilize the Zenari genetics and erase centuries of fear. But if she was wrong, Elias took a deep breath. Nyland, you don't have to do this. The ambassador gave a small smile. Yes, I do. If humans and Zenari are ever to trust one another again, someone must take the first step. Varen, the lead Zenari scientist, adjusted the glowing control panels as Evelyn prepared the genetic stabilizer. The serum was an intricate mix of bioengineered proteins designed to neutralize the unstable reaction caused by human DNA. Evelyn exhaled. This should work, but we won't know until we administer it. Nyland lay down on the medical platform, his breathing steady. The mechanical arm descended, its needle tip glowing with golden energy. Evelyn hesitated only a second before pressing the activation switch. The injection entered Nyland's system. At first, nothing happened. Then, his body convulsed. Elias tensed. Evelyn's fingers danced across the console. His cellular structure is shifting. Nyland gasped, his skin rippling with faint waves of light. Energy surged through his body, twisting his DNA as it fought against centuries of inherited instability. Suddenly, the monitors beeped frantically. Varen's voice was sharp. His vital signs are dropping. Elias clenched his fists. Damn it. We need to stop. No. Evelyn's eyes were locked on the data screen. His body is resisting. But if he stabilizes, this could work. Sweat beaded on Nyland's brow. He groaned, his fingers tightening into fists. Every muscle in his body was under strain, but he refused to cry out. He was fighting. Minutes felt like hours. Then, the readings changed. Evelyn's eyes widened. Wait, his DNA is normalizing. The room fell silent as Nyland's body stopped convulsing. His breathing slowed. The light under his skin faded. And then, he opened his eyes. Elias stepped forward cautiously. Nyland. The Zenari ambassador blinked, as if adjusting to something new. He looked down at his own hands, flexing his fingers. I feel different. Evelyn scanned him again. Then, a slow, shocked smile spread across her face. It worked. Varen exhaled in disbelief. You stabilized his genetics. A wave of realization hit Elias. If the process was successful on Nyland, then it could be reproduced for all Zenari. For the first time in centuries, there was hope. But before anyone could celebrate, the doors burst open. Zenari guards flooded the room, weapons raised. Behind them stood High Chancellor Mixa, and she did not look pleased. What have you done? She demanded. Elias clenched his jaw. The fight wasn't over yet. The sharp hum of Zenari weapons filled the air as the guards surrounded the lab. Captain Elias Voss instinctively stepped in front of Dr. Evelyn Carter, his muscles tense. Ambassador Nyland slowly sat up from the medical table, his silver eyes meeting High Chancellor Mix's furious gaze. "What have you done?" Mix's voice was like ice. Evelyn held up her hands. "We did what we promised. We found a cure." Mix's golden eyes flickered with doubt. "Lies. You tampered with his genetics. You risked his life." Nyland stood up. The room fell silent. He looked down at his hands, flexing them slowly. Then he took a deep breath, and for the first time in his life, he felt whole. No weakness, no genetic instability, just strength and balance. "Mixa," he said, his voice steady. "I am fine." The council members exchanged shocked glances. No Zenari who had come into contact with human DNA had ever survived unchanged. Varen, the Zenari scientist, stepped forward hesitantly. "I monitored the entire process, Chancellor. His DNA has stabilized." Mix's expression darkened. "And yet, you defied our laws. The punishment for such a crime is death." Elias clenched his fists. "Death? After we just proved we can help your people." Mix's gaze locked onto him. "You assume we wish for help. We have survived without your kind for centuries." Nyland's voice turned sharp. "Survived, yes. But lived? Thrived? No. Our people are dying slowly, Mixa. The instability still exists. It just takes longer to break us apart." A murmur spread among the council. They knew it was true. The genetic sickness had weakened generations of Zenari, limiting their evolution. Evelyn took a deep breath. "You don't have to trust us, but let the scientists study Nyland. If we're wrong, we'll accept the consequences." Mix's eyes flashed. "And if you're right?" Elias stepped forward. "Then it's time to end this division. No more fear. No more isolation. Let humans and Zenari exist together, without this curse hanging over us." Silence. Mix's jaw tightened. She looked at Nyland, truly seeing him. There was something in his posture, strong, unbroken, that was undeniable. Finally, she let out a slow breath. "You have 3 days," she said. 3 days to prove this cure is real." Elias exhaled in relief. That was all they needed. But just as hope filled the air, the alarms suddenly blared. A red warning light flashed across the lab. A guard's voice crackled through the speakers. "High Chancellor, an unknown fleet is approaching the planet. It's human." Elias's heart stopped. Earth had found them. And this time, they weren't coming to talk. The alarms echoed through the Zenari Biocenter, flashing red light across the room. Captain Elias Voss felt his stomach drop. A human fleet was approaching. Evelyn's hands tightened into fists. "They don't know the situation. If they think we're in danger, they'll attack first and ask questions later." Elias finished grimly. High Chancellor Mixa turned sharply to her guards. "Prepare planetary defenses. If the humans come as aggressors, we will not hesitate to destroy them." Elias stepped forward, his voice firm. "Don't do that. If you fire on them, you'll be confirming their worst fears." Mix's golden eyes burned with suspicion. "And what if they fire first?" Elias hesitated. He didn't know. Nyland placed a hand on Mix's arm. "Give Elias a chance to speak to them. If humans have truly changed, he may be able to stop this before it's too late." The Chancellor's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "You have one chance, Captain Voss." Elias wasted no time. Within minutes, he was escorted to the Zenari's main communications hub. A massive screen flickered to life, revealing the flagship of the United Earth Fleet, a behemoth of steel and plasma weaponry, hovering above the planet like a storm waiting to break. The transmission connected. A familiar face appeared on the screen. Admiral Julian Mercer, commander of the fleet. His cold blue eyes locked onto Elias immediately. "Captain Voss," Mercer said, his voice sharp. We lost contact with your team. What's your status? Elias took a breath. Admiral, listen to me. We've made a breakthrough. The Zenari are not our enemies. We can fix what happened in the past, but you need to stand down. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Stand down. We detected Zenari energy weapons charging. I won't let my people walk into a trap. Elias knew what this looked like. Earth still feared the unknown. If Mercer thought humanity was under threat, he wouldn't hesitate to fire. Evelyn jumped in. Admiral, you need to trust us. We found a cure. We can undo the damage humans caused centuries ago. If we fight now, we'll destroy that chance forever. Mercer's expression didn't change. You expect me to believe the same aliens who wiped out thousands of humans are suddenly our allies? Elias gritted his teeth. We caused their suffering first, Admiral. We're the ones who destabilized their genetics. We owe them this chance. Silence. Then Mercer leaned forward slightly. You're asking me to trust them, but can we trust you, Captain? Elias's hands tightened at his sides. This was it. The moment that would decide war or peace. I trust them, Elias said. And if I'm wrong, you won't have to fire on this planet. They'll kill me first. Another silence. Then Mercer exhaled. We'll hold position. But if I see one sign of betrayal. Elias nodded. You won't. The transmission cut. Evelyn let out a breath. Nylan looked at Elias with newfound respect. But Mixa still looked uncertain. The fate of both species now hung by a fragile thread, and it could snap at any moment. A tense silence filled the Zenari Biocenter as the human fleet hovered above the planet. Captain Elias Voss had convinced Admiral Mercer to stand down for now, but the fragile peace could break with one wrong move. High Chancellor Mixa turned to Elias. Your Admiral waits, but his patience is thin. If your cure fails, this peace will die before it even begins. Elias nodded. Then let's prove it works. Dr. Evelyn Carter had already begun preparations. Ambassador Nylan had survived the genetic stabilizer, but they needed more proof. Dozens of Zenari volunteers had gathered, those who had suffered the instability for generations. One by one, they stepped forward. Varen, the lead Zenari scientist, helped administer the injections. The golden serum flowed into their veins, and like Nylan, their bodies reacted instantly. Some collapsed, convulsing for a few terrifying seconds. Others gasped as light rippled under their skin. The room filled with tension. Then, one by one, they stabilized. Evelyn scanned them, her hands shaking slightly. Their DNA, it's correcting itself. A hushed murmur spread among the Zenari. The sickness that had haunted them for centuries, the fear of death from human touch, was disappearing. Nylan turned to Mixa, his voice filled with emotion. Chancellor, the truth is undeniable. Our people no longer have to fear humanity. Mixa's face was unreadable. Then she turned to Elias. Tell your admiral to land. Elias felt a weight lift from his chest. It was over. A few hours later, a historic moment unfolded. Admiral Mercer arrived on the surface, flanked by human officers. Zenari warriors stood across from them. Two species, once divided by tragedy, now faced each other in cautious silence. Elias took the first step forward. Then Nylan did the same. In front of everyone, Elias extended his hand. A ripple of tension spread through the crowd. For centuries, no Zenari had dared to touch a human. Nylan looked at Elias's hand. The past tried to pull him back. Memories of suffering, of fear. But now, he knew the truth. He reached out and shook Elias's hand. The crowd gasped. The Zenari watched in awe as nothing happened. No sickness, no pain, no death. For the first time in history, a human and a Zenari stood together without fear. Evelyn exhaled, eyes shining with relief. Admiral Mercer nodded slowly. Even Mixa, despite her hardened nature, looked at the scene with something like hope. This is the beginning. Nyland said softly. A new future for both our people. Elias smiled. And this time, we build it together. Above them, the human fleet powered down its weapons. On the ground, the Zenari lowered theirs. The war that had lasted for centuries had ended, not with a battle, but with a handshake.